Hello and welcome back to the How the Race Was Won podcast. I'm Dane Cash, and I'm here to talk bike racing as ever with bike racing analyst extraordinaire Cosmo Catalano. Cosmo, the Vuelta's over. What did you think of it?
I thought it was really good. I think we got a bit of an anticlimax, but I enjoyed watching it. I think it was the most entertaining Grand Tour of the year, which it does tend to be. But yeah, I got my money's worth. I'm stoked on it.
Listeners, I swear, I did not pay Cosmo to say that.
No, the Vuelta could be entertaining in all sorts of different ways, and I think it was a very good blend of entertainment today. You know, it was balanced.
Yeah, we got stage battles, lots of great stage battles. We got a GC battle that was a lot more interesting in ways that I didn't expect. I can say that. I'll admit to that. I was not expecting Mr. Ben O'Connor to be up there as long as he was. First of all, I didn't expect him to take the red jersey to begin with. And then when he had it, I certainly didn't think he was going to be in it as long as he was. He even had the bookmakers wondering whether he might win the overall.
I still can't believe that, though.
Even when it was starting to look like it was not going to happen, he still fought pretty admirably to stay in it as long as he could. In the end, what happened?
In the end, Primož Roglič won the race, I think pretty much like he drew it up, like I said last week. It really felt like it was almost going perfectly to script. I think everything kind of landed in his favor, and I'm not mad about it because this is a guy who's had a lot of stuff not land in his favor over the years.
It's true. At the Vuelta, though, generally, not always, but generally things have gone his way. This was his fourth career Vuelta overall win. That ties the record. So now it's like, can he win?
Who is he tied with?
Roberto Heras is your co-record holder with 4 Vueltas.
Fun story. After one of his Vueltas, I think his third, I was in Madrid for the final stage because the Worlds were also it was like the next weekend. And I'm walking away from the bike race and there's a stoplight. I'm waiting across the street. Lo and behold, what should pull up next to me but the Liberty Seguros car with Manolo Sainz at the wheel and Roberto Heras in the passenger seat.
Wow.
And this was back in the day before you had cell phones with cameras in them. And so I had my camera in my bag and I was like, oh crap, I should probably try to take the camera out of my bag and take a picture of this. And before I could, light changed and drove off.
Bummer.
Yeah.
You could have had proof of your run-in.
I could have.
You know, with, I guess not only with your 4-time champion Heras, but with the size. What a legend of Spanish cycling.
What a pairing.
Yeah.
Name a more iconic duo.
Well, Roglič, now your 4-time winner. Hats off to Primož Roglič. And yeah, I think, I didn't ask you what's your headline, but I feel like the... according to script, or as he drew it up, that's a really good way to sum it up.
I think my summation from last week holds again, which I'm pretty happy about, honestly. Normally, I just look dumb the week after, but
I feel like you've got a good couple of weeks here where you can look back on your previous week's predictions and say, yeah, how about that? I was right. And I feel like we should herald that. Heralding you, Cosmo. I love that. I love doing that.
The bike racing is unimportant. What really matters is that we keep this about me.
I think so. I mean, that's why I'm here. Can you tell me and also our listeners how this race was won over the last week?
Sure. Stage 16, we got our Lagos de Corvadonga stage. I think it delivered, at least in terms of scenery. Got our weird stair-steppy climb. We got our mist. We got our break up the road. We got Max Poole trying to make the race as hard as he could or as stable as he could to kind of stop the slowing and stopping and starting because he knows that's not his strongest thing. Still, we had Marc Soler being slightly stronger after that effort, enough to get clear over the top, win the stage. Around 8.7K to go, at least for the break. Probably closer to 10 for the main group. We had T-Rex Quick Step take over and launched Landa early, and nobody...
Back when Landa was looking good.
Back when Landa was looking good, and nobody did a thing. It was, that one sequence where there's the one guy in the battle and he charges forward and everyone else looks around and what is that guy doing? That's sort of what happened. They caught him a few K later and we ended up with, O'Connor lost time, but he didn't implode. And luckily for him, I think Roglič knew that this wasn't going to be his best day to try and get the red jersey back. He and Mas and Carapaz all pretty close together, but didn't really go all out for certainly not the descent because it was very rainy and wet, but also coming up to the finish line. I took the last time the stage was raced was the 2023 women's Vuelta, and I tried to line up the KM's go signs to get a speed reading on how long it took Demi Vollering, who was breaking away trying to win the race, the whole thing. So she was going flat out. How much faster she had gone than these other guys, because they clearly did not go that fast. Couldn't do it, though, because the Vuelta being the Vuelta, the KM to go markers were in completely different spots, despite the same finish line, which I checked on Strava.
It's misty. It's hard to place those things.
It really did sort of seem like at the women's race, they just put them up where it was easy to. And at the men's race, maybe they were trying to hit the exact points. But I will say from 200 meters to go to the end of the stage, Demi Vollering is same time with the Roglic group. So that's, they were not trying to win that race. They were happy with how things stood.
So we had Soler getting that win, and I thought that was really great to watch Soler do that, and he seemed over the moon to have done that in his own way. He's not that... It's funny, when he's angry, you can see it. He's happy, like, it doesn't seem to quite match the emotion.
He just has anger and lack of anger. Those are his...
Yeah, but for Soler, I think he seemed very happy, and at least the things, the quotes that came out of it, whatever his facial expressions were saying. The fact that he hadn't won a whole lot with UAE since moving over in 22, this obviously meant a lot to him, and this was his second stage, but he won in 22, and he kind of hadn't done much since then. Second stage with UAE, third stage win at the Vuelta overall, and set him up to be in contention for the polka dots. We'll get to that in a bit, with another rider from the same team. All right, so that's stage 16. What about stage 17?
Stage 17, if a Vuelta sprint happens and Van Aert is not there to contest it, doesn't make a sound.
Yeah.
No, I mean, not to take away from Caden Groves. He won the sprint, and it wasn't an easy sprint. It was wet. It was kind of messy. I think he may have, I don't want to say he got lucky, but Pavel Bittner's plan was clearly to get on his wheel and then try to go around him at the end of the sprint, and he either intentionally or otherwise defeated that plan by going real late, and there just wasn't enough road for Bittner to come around. So
I honestly think, that is the benefit of having a well-executed lead out. It's that you get to go at the right time, and that everyone else either has to launch too early and then go around you and have to cover all this ground, or there's not enough room for them to make up. And I thought that was it was a really good job from Caden Groves' team to be able to lead him out, even though they also had to put in a bunch of work to catch some late attackers, because this was like sprint all the way. Oh, this is obviously going to be a sprint all the way until it wasn't. And then it was like, wait, what? Is this not going to be a sprint?
It was very chaotic. I probably should have mentioned the fact the last 10K were solidly people getting off the front and looking legit like they might win the stage.
Yeah. Alpecin worked hard to make sure that wasn't the case. And they still had a guy to pull him right up to the 200 meters to go. But yeah, you mentioned that a particular name was missing, and we should have said it when we were talking about.
Oh yeah, the stage 6. We didn't talk about it at all. Holy crap! Okay,
stage 16. There was a rider who crashed, and then he crashed again. And when I wrote the report for the day, I pointed out that there was the obvious blood. Well, okay, so there's blood all over his elbow. He was obviously in pain in his knee. That was the obvious thing that was hurting him, because he was clearly the knee was hurt. And then there's a whole other element of him looking, I think the words I used were generally unwell. He just didn't look like he was having a good time. I think
going into shock is how I would describe it.
Yeah, that could be it. He looked very much...
Kit pointed out his lips were kind of bluish.
Yeah.
Just seemed like an unhappy dude. I was kind of amazed, all things considered, that he tried to continue. He must have been very invested in this. I mean, with good cause, invested in finishing the race. But it wasn't like he got in the team car. He sat on the back of the team car until the ambulance came. There
is a mindset, I think, if you're a Wout van Aert, that I know exists and yet don't have. And it's that.
I feel like Wout is the most well-adjusted of the.
He does seem very well. Yeah, that's true.
There aren't any weird stories. It doesn't seem like there are any weird Wout van Aert incidents. Even when he has a crummy day, he's so happy when he picks up his kid after the finish, and I don't know. It was a bummer. He was having a really good race. I made it a thing last week, and of course got really excited when he's in the break on stage 16.
The day later,
and then he crashed out, and I was just like,
Yeah, that was a major bummer. And when he crashed out, he went from being the obviously no chance anybody else takes this off his shoulders, points champion, to not. To Caden Groves' credit, he then went and won a stage. So good for him for winning that third stage of the race to really cement, okay, if Wout's not here, then I am a deserving points champion. And he was.
Yeah, and after the race, he said it was really it made his wins when Van Aert was here way more meaningful. To have him to be the guy that he was able to beat, and so that was
right.
kind of cool to hear him say.
Yep, and just a bummer that's how he gets the points jersey. I'm sure Caden Groves himself doesn't love that. That's how he got into the points jersey, because he did he did then go on to have some success, and he won 3 stages and all that. But it's just tough the way it all kind of worked out with Van Aert leaving the race. Moving on, stage 18 in the Basque Country. What happened there?
I got another Equipo Kern Pharma win.
How about that?
To the point where I said that Equipo Kern Pharma is the new old Euskaltel Euskadi, because there is apparently a new Euskaltel Euskadi, but they are less exciting than the old guys in the orange kits, kind of Lance Armstrong era-ish. Just people known to blow up races unexpectedly, and we saw that again today. Like a really, almost looked like they were sort of in charge of that finale.
They rode this, so this was a breakaway win, the stage 18, where they had a tough climb, like, I don't know, 2/3 of the way through the stage, and then it was sort of a hilly ride to the finish. But in the breakaway, they bossed it. Like, this team had numbers. I think they had 4 guys in the break on the day, including previously 2-time stage winner Pablo Castrillo, who took his first 2 pro wins in this very race. But it was Urco Berrade who was their number 1 Dossard on the team. And it was just coming off of a nice Vuelta a Burgos, so he's not just a rando. He's got talent. He was the one who they were riding for in the end, and played everything to perfection there. Got the win. 3rd win for Kern Pharma in this race. And for Berrade, he's from nearby Pamplona, so his family was there, friends were there, and, again, really emotional and just excited, and that's such a cool story when you get to do all this in front of your family and friends. All right, stage 19. We had so many breakaway days in this Vuelta. This was not one of them.
This was a very un-Vuelta day. The break didn't get a lot of time. Red Bull Bora kind of took over heading up the final climb, and at one point rode away from everyone else with 3 riders.
Very strange.
Though it was very short-lived. It was not like it wasn't a very Ineos Sky postal thing. It was very short-lived, but still very, clearly highlighted how much stronger Roglic, and to a certain extent his team is, than the competitors. But I think some of that also is when Roglic went, everybody knew the script. Everybody knew the game. Moss wasn't really going to chase him because he didn't want to risk losing time to Carapaz. Vice versa for Carapaz. O'Connor, I think, sort of knew his time was up. He'd sort of been referencing losing the jersey in interviews for a couple days beforehand. And he didn't completely blow up. He managed to retain 2nd overall. But Roglic clearly... even the weather was not. It was bright and sunny and calm. It seemed very. It was very unusual, out of sync for the rest of the race. But a good day for Roglic to stamp his authority on the race, as we used to say.
And his team too, stamping authority. And I thought it was really funny seeing his post-race interview, where he said that he hadn't been seeking this stage win, but his teammates just went out and rode at hard pace, so he just had to follow. I just had to go. What else am I going to do?
Now, is he doing a bit, though? Because
I don't know. It's hard to say. He's good at deadpan. He's so good at deadpan.
I'm told by Slovenian cycling expert Kate Wagner that he is known to do bits.
Yes. So yeah, maybe he was. Hard to say. But his team did just that. They rode at a really hard tempo, and they just rode away from, I think it was Carapaz was on his wheel, and then he wasn't.
Yeah.
And then there was a gap, and it was such a strange. It was you brought up Ineos, and it wasn't the same, because if you think back to, I think it was on Axe Trois de Mans in 2013, where Port and Froome went away. Port finished 2nd on the stage, not that far behind Froome. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like Florian Lipovitz.
Yeah, no, there was definitely. I would check the results. Where was the next Red Bull rider? Lipovitz was.
Yeah, they were
a minute
down,
and a half down in 10th.
Yeah,
so.
They weren't 20 minutes down, but they weren't right there. Gaudu was your 2nd place. Matthias Skelmoza was 3rd on the day. And then Lipovitz was back in 10th, I think. But there was that moment where it was holy crap, Red Bull looks strong. Nobody else followed. So Roglic takes red. O'Connor loses the red jersey. He was understandably disappointed. Not like he was, totally in a state of inconsolable sadness, but he seemed like he was a little bit bummed about it. I think he had probably tried to believe a little bit. Yeah, and the red jersey dream ended there on stage 19. Stage 20, what happened?
You know, we had a GC group probably down to about 15, 20, and about 5K from the line. Eddie Dunbar kind of goes out of it. He's not well placed enough on GC for anyone to be that concerned about him. And it didn't seem like people were super invested in getting that stage win or getting that those bonus seconds. And Dunbar managed to hold him off, rode really well, real smart, real strong. I think his gap was fairly stable, which is not what you always see in these sort of finales, and took his second stage of the Vuelta.
Yeah, he and Kern Pharma, I feel like, are the two entities that really thrived on these mountainous days where the GC riders let someone else kind of go for the stage. Those are the riders of the Vuelta from the, I guess, this wasn't a breakaway because he was with the GC group, but he attacked the GC group and they said, yeah, fine. He deserves a lot of credit for that. He's a rider that, maybe because of the fact that he's, ridden for English-speaking teams, comes from Ireland, and therefore we speak the same language. He's certainly been in the media for years, but the wins were hard to come by, and it's just really great for him to get those finally here at this Vuelta. That was the last mountain stage of the race. Final day was a TT. That was today. And, what happened there?
Stefan Kung in his new TT position that he can see out of, won convincingly. Primoz Roglic, what is he, 30 seconds back in second? Yes, but not a ton of GC riders in the front of the race, which is not what we're used to see. I think we're usually used to seeing the GC podium closely overlapping with the last TT podium.
I think that's absolutely true. I think the reason that we didn't is that all of the GC riders, barring Primoz Roglic, are climber types in this race. Because normally we get Roglic and then also Pogačar, Vingegaard, guys who are great at time trialing, Geraint Thomas. Not so much here at this Vuelta. It's all about the climbers and then Roglic. I was surprised. I shouldn't say I was surprised. I thought it was noteworthy. And this, again, I was talking about the way that these professional athletes think. I mean, the way that Wout van Aert's mindset is totally different from mine. If I'm in this final TT, if I'm Primoz Roglic, if I'm hunting my 4th overall Vuelta win, I start the day on a traditional road bike, and I take every corner. I just tiptoe around every corner, and I'm so careful. And that's just not what they do. Mm-hmm. Like he wanted to do well today. Obviously, he finished second on the day. He destroyed all the other GC contenders. It was really cemented the win.
Didn't run double discs though.
He didn't run double discs. That's true.
I think the second starter, Eduardo Affini, ran double discs in a kind of windy day, and it was evident that this was not the fastest way to do it. Although I think he was in the hot seat. I think he set a new time until Camp on Arts came in. But he was the second starter. So
yeah, not that hard to be in the hot seat.
It was not the correct setup for the day, but I appreciate him going for it. I joked on the internet that this was a hazing thing, that every Visma rider has to do one TT on double discs.
Yeah, that's the rule. Stefan Kung had never won a Grand Tour stage, and it's funny because I'm sure it's not funny for him, but he's somebody that he was a favorite going into the stage. He was like, okay, looks like a great time for Stefan Kung to take this win. Big, long, flat TT. Obviously, Stefan Kung is going to do well here, and yet, he's won plenty of World Tour races. He's won stages at Suisse and Romandy and Binkbank, but he'd never done it at a Grand Tour, and I'm sure this was a cathartic experience for him to finally get that Grand Tour stage win and be able to say that he's time trialed at the highest level in a race like this. He's been second in the world at the Worlds. So good for you, Stefan Kung, and good way to end the Vuelta with the stage win for Groupama. Your final GC standings, Primoz Roglic, your 4-time winner now. Ben O'Connor finished second overall, and I was really happy to see that. I thought he did a great time trial, finishing 11th on the day, better than I expected from Ben O'Connor. And in the end, there was, going into the day, it was like, can O'Connor hold on to his podium position? And then it was pretty clear, he can hold on to it, and also he's going to easily finish second. Mas and Carapaz didn't really come close. Mas third, Carapaz fourth, Skelmoza fifth, David Gaudu sixth, Florian Lipovitz, Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe coming in seventh, and that's a really great performance from a rider who did some hard teamwork this whole race. managed to finish inside the top 10 on his own. And I feel like Lipowitz is one of the breakout riders of this year. Just 23 years old, had a great Romandy, really good in support this year for Roglic. I'm sure, and being German, I'm sure that the Red Bull team is pretty stoked that he is there. All right, let's talk some of the storylines. I want to rewind a little bit. There was a period where, a week ago, Roglic was already the favorite to win the race. And it seemed that one of two things were the only two things that might keep that from happening. One, Ben O'Connor somehow managed to hold on. That didn't end up happening. The other was, Enric Mas had been climbing really well. Maybe he actually puts time into Roglic. And I will say he actually did put seconds, barely, into Roglic on one of these days in the final week. But it looked like if there was going to be anyone who was actually going to challenge Roglic in the mountains, it was Enric Mas. And my hope was that, given the fact that Enric Mas has finished on the Vuelta podium so many times already without having won it, surely he will ride more aggressively, do what he can to try to win it, throw the dice. And I don't really know that he did. I don't really feel like he rode aggressively enough to try. In the end, he finishes third. What does that do for you? I mean, another third place? You've been second 3 times. A third place isn't even as good as that. Why not just attack from 50K out? I just feel like he could have done more.
No, I completely agree with you. I think it almost might have been a different kind of race if we had Roglic in the jersey sooner. I think Decathlon, for all the good work they did, was not super controlling of the race. I think we saw this on stage 18 when EF kind of turned the race on its head briefly. They weren't dominant. They weren't kind of setting the tone. They weren't keeping things fast and hard and predictable. So you really always had to kind of worry about what might go wrong versus a race where Bora is in control. The pace is probably harder up a lot of the climbs. Maybe that opens more doors for Mas to try and snatch that time. Even though it would be on a team that is, going to work really hard to try and protect the jersey instead of protecting a virtual gap that they would have after getting the jersey. It wasn't a situation that seemed like he could profit from. Well, I feel weird because I said everybody kind of knew the script. Everybody knew the game plan where like Roglic was going to take the lead and then hold it through the rest of the race. But it wasn't, you always had to doubt. You always had to wonder what was going to happen because you had this X factor of the team leading the race not being the strongest one in it.
Which is an unusual thing this late in the Grand Tour for sure. Richard Carapaz did make things interesting when he could. And I applaud him for that. He finished 4th overall, but it's not like he didn't try. And I appreciate that he tried to put time into Mas. And yeah.
He made a lot of guys' tours worse. And honestly, like Landa specifically, who got caught out in that big attack. And to, Mattia Catania, who had to drop out of the breakaway and ride with the already dropped Mas, despite being
on
pretty strong.
Stage 18. Yeah, Landa got dropped. And by the way, Landa, also credit to Landa, he also did try some things here and there. He ultimately collapsed pretty spectacularly in the last couple of days. But hey, Landismo, viva Landismo, because he worked to make this interesting when he could. And then just kind of
maybe that's, Mas is like, he could have attacked super early on stage 16 and not gotten anywhere, and then lost 20-30 seconds to Carapaz in the finale of that stage, right? Like it is a little bit, I agree that, maybe he could have done more. He's done this a lot. He's been here before, but also like, I think it's still a pretty good finish. I think Movistar would be happy to be third.
That's true. Movistar's got to be happy with a podium in their home Grand Tour. That's true. In any case, Enric Mas, congrats for finishing on the podium. Maybe one day, especially if Roglic doesn't go to the Vuelta, you'll have your chance. Ben O'Connor finishing second, though, I think really deserves... Look, I mean, on the one hand, I'm not sure Roglic is going to get enough credit for winning because I think a lot of people were probably hoping that Ben O'Connor would hold on to red for the storyline.
They're hoping hard enough to change the odds in Ben O'Connor's favor.
Roglic, though, rode a great race. I mean, he just did exactly what was needed of him, and in the end won handily. And yeah, the Vuelta is his. I mean, it is so... At the beginning of this race, he was the favorite, but not by a huge margin. It wasn't like a yeah, I mean, it was clear that other riders might be involved, and he just didn't really let anyone else deter him from his game plan. He was fine with Ben O'Connor getting the jersey and taking all this time. And he just, rode the perfect race. And the fact that he's now won this 4 times, it is so hard to win a race 4 times, to avoid misfortune. And if you're Primož Roglič, it's like doubly hard to avoid misfortune, apparently. Based on what I've seen in his career, misfortune really clings to him, like a moth to a flame.
I think it's really huge because this is his first year with a new team that has a lot of money and big plans. And it would be real silly if their big acquisition kind of showed up and went poof their first year in service. So to get this win is pretty big. And to go back to Ben O'Connor, I think one of the things in my group chat, one of the things that really came up a lot was the Ben O'Connor redemption arc. Because as I mentioned in our first Vuelta show, like he does not come out of Tour de France Unchained looking like someone you want on your bike racing team. And all the things, and again, it's super edited, right? They pick heroes, they pick heels. Who knows what the actual truth of the matter, if such truth even exists, is within the decathlon team. But the way O'Connor rode this Vuelta was awesome, and his presence was awesome. And, the team was totally up for doing whatever they could to defend his lead, even though they were totally overmatched. It was awesome. It was a great companion piece to how he appears in Unchained. And like, he rode a race where like he didn't have great days in the red jersey. There were some days where he was really bad, and he said, I was really bad today. And he just, instead of screaming fuck into the radio, which has been his response in the past, he kind of knuckled down, like got his head on straight, regrouped, found teammates, did what he could, and held onto the jersey for 2 weeks. Like, that's hard to do. So
yeah, he managed to fight for red quite admirably. Give us an interesting and entertaining race, even though Sepp Kuss and UAE both pretty heavily disappointed. Those are the 2 entities that I thought were going to challenge Roglič. Neither one did. And if it hadn't been for Ben O'Connor, this could have been a very boring race. And then, having done all that, given us this dramatic, entertaining 2 weeks, he still managed to finish second and hold off Landa and Carapaz, who had been, close to unseating him from the top of the leaderboard, or the second place of the leaderboard. And yeah, I think all of those things, to me, are very redeeming for Ben O'Connor after that, Tour de France Unchained, where he didn't come across that well. So good on you, Ben O'Connor. Really appreciate the way you rode. I thought you made the race, like you're listening. I thought you made this race really entertaining, and I think it's awesome also that you finished second overall. And the other thing is, he won a stage. He'll always have a stage win. And now he is a stage winner across all 3 Grand Tours, which is not an easy thing to do. So impressive for Ben O'Connor. And I think both he and Roglič deserve all of the praise that they have gotten over the last few weeks. When you look at the start list, who stands out as an unheralded rider for you?
You mean the finish, or like just the riders in the race? If I'm looking at the start list and I'm thinking of, these are a bunch of names, who do I recognize at the end of the Vuelta that I didn't at the beginning? Is that kind of what we're...
Oh, that's a good way of framing it. Yeah.
I mean, Max Poole comes to mind.
Yes.
As one of probably the most prominent of a half dozen or so guys
who didn't win, but
lit the race up, did not win a stage.
Right.
But
obviously,
made the presence.
I think Pablo Castrillo, like if you look at him, it's like,
of course.
But in terms of unheralded riders who didn't win, but now we know who they. Yeah, Max Poole, 21 years old, shares my birthday, by the way, March 1st.
How about that?
Happens to have been born 14 years after me, but same birthday. Really great, honestly, 12-month period, because he was already starting to show some talent last spring. And then, he was close on a bunch of stages in this Vuelta. He was third, 3 times? Ended up finishing third in the points classification. That's how often he was up there in the stage battles. And just a really consistent, close but no cigar kind of performer in this race. I think we're going to see more of him. Anyone else?
I feel like I'm always hyping Matthias Skelmosa, but I thought he had a really good Grand Tour. He
managed to finish 5th. Yeah. Came in the last day. He jumped into 5th overall. He did a great final TT, and David Gaudu didn't. Skelmoza leapfrogged him to finish 5th.
And I mean, Skelmoza was up there in a couple of the big mountain stages, like top 3. And it wasn't like he wasn't on a ton of people's radar as an overall favorite. I think if you told him he was going to be top 5 at the beginning of the race, he probably would have been like, that sounds pretty good. I'll take that.
Yeah, that's his first career GC top 10. That's his first career GC top 20, let alone being 5th overall.
In a Grand Tour.
In a Grand Tour, yes. He has won the Tour de Suisse, which is quite a good result in and of itself. But he was consistently there in the final week. I think he sort of rode into this Vuelta a little bit because early on, he just wasn't quite there. But then in the last few high mountain stages, particularly stage 19, he was 3rd on the day, right behind David Gaudu. I mean, finished on the same time. And that, to me, suggests that he has what it takes over 3 weeks. And that's a really good sign moving forward for Skelmoza. And for a team that, could use a little bit more in the GC department. And he's so young that you could think he, could get better from here. Theo Gegenhardt, the big signing for Little Trek this year as a GC rider, and just had one mishap after another. Did Gegenhardt this year, and he finished the Vuelta, but was kind of quiet throughout the race. So they had a top 5 anyway. It didn't come from him, but they still got one. All right, Vuelta. I think we've analyzed it enough. I'm sad it's over, but I'm glad we got to watch it. As ever, it was an awesome race. Duh, because it's the Vuelta. Let's take a break. All right, Cosmo. Some other World Tour racing has been going on over the past few days. Also, non-World Tour racing. Tour Britain went on. Stevie Williams won that. Great year for Stevie Williams, and went out and won the biggest race in Britain. Good for him. Mark Hirschi went out and won a race. Just want to throw that out there. 1 Point Pro. Also, Tour de Romandie Feminine. Interesting happenings over there. And Wheel Talk will certainly cover this, but what is the sort of the Reader's Digest version of the intrigue that happened in Romandie?
Kopecky does well in stage 1, finishes 2nd to Elisa Balsamo and gets some bonus points. Stage 2 is kind of the queen stage. It's only a 3-day kind of compressed Romandie version. Kind of a starty-stoppy climb. SD Works trying to control it, but basically Vollering gets clear, and Kopecky kind of rides with her. Her teammate, Lotte Kopecky, rides with her, not really contributing. Vollering had done most of the damage getting clear the group, had been setting the pace all the way in, and kind of in a very similar fashion to what we saw at Strade Bianche 2 years ago. Around 300 meters to go, it becomes evident that Kopecky is sprinting against Vollering to try and win this. Part of that may be she was leading. She knew that if she could not lose, I think 2-3 seconds to Vollering, that she could she would end up in the leader's jersey, and that the team would probably ride for her. She tried to come around Vollering at the last second, threw her bike a little too early. Vollering threw her bike right afterwards, just clipped her at the line. Vollering gave an interview afterwards where they were sort of asking her if she would attack tomorrow, and she did not act like she would be happy to defend Kopecky's lead, before kind of moderating a bit and be like, well, if she's in the lead, we're probably not going to be attacking her to get the stage win back, even though I'm leaving the team. It's just very tense over there at SD Works these days. But Kopecky did end up winning. Vollering crashed in the final sprint. I think she's okay, but second overall. Just weird times.
It's sort of tale as old as time, though, with this team, whatever it's been called, whether it's SD Works or Boels Domans or whatever. I mean, there are always multiple superstars on the team. They don't always play nicely. Sometimes they have, sometimes they compete for leadership, and at the end of the day, they win constantly. That is the story with this team. And the really interesting wrinkle in it this year is that Demi Vollering will be leaving, and so that adds all kinds of extra spice to the mix. Wheel Talk will certainly have more. Check out that this week. Abby and company, I'm sure, will break down the action from Romandie Feminine. We will also take a quick look at what happened over at the Bemmerse Classics the race that all the riders just call the Hamburg race because it changes name pretty frequently.
They've been holding on to Cyclassics for a while.
That's true. The sponsors have changed. It was Vattenfall for a while. Yes, the Cyclassics in Hamburg. Very frequently a sprint, won by Alexander Kristoff about 1,000 times. This year, we had, again, a sprint that had some big names in it, including Jasper Philipsen, including Kristoff, by the way, neither of whom were in the top 3. What did happen there on that finishing straight?
You say straight, right? But it's not that straight.
What happened there on that finishing curve?
It's a long day. It's narrow. There are turns. It is definitely a position sprint. It's pretty fast too. I think there's a lot of stuff people doesn't quite register. You think you're moving your guy up at just the right time, and it turns out you're moving them up, 10 seconds too late. And we saw Olaf Koy, who was really just surfing wheels. He got put in position pretty well, but didn't have a lead out train or anything like that. Really just time his moment right, kind of break out. Lidl Trek did a pretty good job moving Jonathan Milan forward, but just too late. I mean, he was visibly faster than anyone else on the road for the last 30 meters of the race, but the finish line is where it is, not where he wanted it to be. And so he was second, and then Benjamin Girmay was on Koy's wheel. It really, I think he maybe was waiting for something to break open that never broke open, give him an opportunity. But it's a tricky sprint. It's a position sprint, and I think maybe this race is not as closely reconned as it should be for a World Tour event.
So with, last week with the Renui Tour, I think I made a pretty big deal out of Milan getting the better of Philipsen. And he did technically get the better of Philipsen again here. Philipsen wasn't in the top 3. But now Olaf Koy beating Milan. So clearly, Olaf Koy is the best sprinter in the world. That's logic.
I don't think they do lineal best sprinter in the world.
I will say, I think Koy wanted to get a little bit more out of the Giro earlier this year. He won a stage. And then since then, he's been really good in the World Tour races. And he's a rider that very young, up and coming with the Visma team, and clearly knows how to time his move. And that's a really key thing that if you're a sprinter, you want to be good at. Milan, so fast, always. That, he's just got so much power. But Koy is showing that he can be beaten with just a bit of timing. And good on Koy for doing it.
It is definitely, I don't want to give the impression that you can sit on the front of this race for the final 3K and then win the sprint because it's so congested, because that's what Red Bull Bora tried to do, and it didn't work. So, it is Olaf Koy and timing sprints. Maybe this is his niche. We'll see.
And I think that's all we got this week. Vuelta, Romandie Feminin, and Cyclassics next week. Racing comes here. I mean, not Colorado, but to North America. The World Tour in Canada. How about that? Quebec and Montreal over the next couple of days. Very exciting. We'll see racing in Quebec on Friday, Montreal on Sunday. Some of my favorite races to attend, ever. I love going to these races. If you happen to be an American or Canadian listener, no matter where you're from, you should try to go sometime. It's a lot of fun. You get to see them go by quite a lot because the courses do several laps in Quebec and Montreal. That will be coming up, and a couple of big names on the start list. One, Tadej Pogačar will be in attendance this year, which is quite exciting. Tom Skoinch, friend of the pod, and Latvian superstar. Several big names going to be in attendance in Canada. We'll have that to talk about next week. Worlds is looming. All eyes are on, everybody with Wout van Aert now. Bit of a bummer there. It is sad. But yeah.
You should postpone Worlds till Wout is recovered. I think
fine with that. I like that. That's a good approach. We will be back in a week to talk about all the action from Canada with an eye towards Worlds. And hope you enjoy this week. I'm Dane Cash. Who are you? What was this?
I'm Cosmo Catalano, and that was the How the Race Was Won podcast.